Hi. Tonight I had some thoughts about language learning, as I often do. I get pretty obsessed about this subject. The channel speaks for itself, and I thought that I should do myself a tea, make myself a tea, and put on a tripod, turn on my computer, and record a little something. This is not this is not at all scripted. I've just been thinking about this for now a few days, and I thought that I should share those thoughts with you. I excuse me for the lighting, which is not very good, and everything, but I needed to get my thoughts out. I need an outlet for this because I started being obsessed, and yeah, I thought I should share this with you. You already know how to speak the language you're learning. You already know. There's nothing else you can do besides speaking it. You know it because you've been studying it. I assume that I'm talking to people that spent a lot of time studying the grammar and watching or looking at vocabulary lists and doing all the things, studying the grammar. Yeah, that's a big point here. That's the main point. So you know how the language works. You've been exposed to it. You understand its structure. But yet you don't go out there to use it in some real life setting. That's why I say you already know how to speak the language. You just have to go for it. And something I observed with different people that are learning foreign languages is that there is this sort of ideal baseline that they need to achieve before using the language they're learning, before putting it to use, before going out there and having the confidence to say that they speak the language. And the reason why I'm saying it's ideal is because it's not something you can achieve. It's not they're taking the problem in the wrong way. They're not attacking the problem with the right angle. We all know that language learning is very difficult. Yes, people will tell you that you can learn with 5 minutes a day doing this method, yada yada, but it's hard. It takes so much effort. It takes so much pain even. And I think that a lot of the pain could be avoided if, or maybe dealt with differently, if some simple paradigm shifts were being made. And what I think about right now is the fact that adults don't have the confidence to speak the language, no matter how much they've been learning it. Or it takes quite an extensive amount of time for them to relax around the language, around the culture. And I think there's several reasons for that. I think there is, okay, this is going to sound harsh, but I think there is a lack of humility. I think that the thought of being exposed as, or not being exposed, but the thought of failing to find their words, failing to correctly speak, the thought of making mistakes, sounding stupid, being embarrassed. This keeps them away from practicing the language. It's a very, very tough barrier to overcome. But there's not just that. I think that most of those people are people that are learning their second language, or at least are learning a foreign language for the first time. And what I've been thinking about is that there might be a certain attached to their native culture, to their native language, that they are afraid to cut off. The reason why I'm saying that is because when I speak foreign languages, I feel very differently about everything, about myself. I don't see others differently. I see others differently, sorry. And I just experience things in a different way. And I think the main reason for that is that when I speak a foreign language, I accept that I'm not speaking my native language, and I cut all of my links to my native culture. Does that make sense? So I'm a big advocate for the, not a theory, but for the idea that a culture and a language are maybe not the same entity, but very, very, very closely related. And when you learn one, you have to learn the other. It makes sense in one sense when you want to learn a culture, while you have to learn the language. But for some reason, people don't know about the other way around. We don't hear about that. When we learn a language, we can learn about the dishes, the traditions, some stuff here and there, but they don't think about adapting to the culture, which to me is crazy, because there are many things that you will say in one language but that you would never say in another language. This could be as easy as some vocabulary, some words, or some ideas. Some cultures are more open about sex, about religion. Some of them are more traditional, and if you don't know the culture, you don't know how to say things correctly in the language. And to me, it's absurd to try to learn the language without the culture. It's incomplete, and I hope you understand what I mean here. But to really understand the culture, that's where I'm getting at. To really understand the culture that is not your own, a different culture, you need to let go of your own. It sounds harsh, but when you learn a second language, you won't ever see your own culture the same way again. You won't ever feel the same way when speaking your native language again. And people experience that when they learn a second language. It's getting harder for them to formulate their sentences. It changes the way they think a little bit, their vocabulary. Sometimes words just come in their second language. It's the same with the more and more languages you know. It happens like a little bit more. But my point is, without considering letting go of your own language and your own culture, and approaching the second culture and the second language with a childlike perception, it doesn't work, because you can't mesh those two cultures together. Even cultures that seem very close, let's say Portuguese culture and the Spanish culture, they're not the same. Even, let's say, French and Italian, they're very, very closely related languages, but they're not the same. French people don't understand Italians don't understand French people can struggle learning Italian, and vice versa. So, I mean, it's such a complex thing that it would be so simplest and so absurd to assume that closely related cultures and languages are the same and that you can blend them together. That's just my thoughts. So basically, what I want to say in this video is that you need to let go of your own culture and approach the new one. I've been saying that a few times, I know. And approach the new one with a childlike perception, without any judgment. It's like, what's the expression in English? With a clean tray. Is that, yeah, well, anyway. Without any perception, without any judgments, with a neutral look on it. Well, this is something you need to aim for. Of course, your culture is always going to stick a little bit. It's never going to go away completely. I can give some examples of myself. Sometimes I still have, even when I speak English or other languages, I can have some French intonations, meaning some, we call that onomatope in French. I forgot the name in English. See, that's another example. But it never leaves you. But you have to consciously make the choice to, the brave choice, it's not easy, to let go of the thought that your culture is right and your language just thinks better and things like that, among other things. And in the second part of the video, I want to talk about confidence when you speak a language. I've mentioned it before, but we're gonna talk about that now. Why is it important? Why is confidence important? Okay, assertiveness too. Think about how you feel and how you act when you speak your native language. You are sure of what you're saying at all times because you've been saying this for your whole life, and there's no reason to doubt what you know. It's very intuitive. You don't have to think about it. And when you approach someone, well, when you start a conversation with someone, the language is not what's going to make you nervous. And you notice that when you speak your native language with, and you're in a tricky situation or you just have some social anxiety, when you are stressed out, you can't formulate sentences correctly. If I start stressing out right now, I will stutter. I will look for my words more, and I just won't be as efficient as a communicator. It's the same thing when you learn another language. If you come in with the same attitude you have towards your native language to concerning the language, your target language, no matter for how long you've been studying it, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you understand the general structure of the language, you know most grammar rules, and you kind of understand what people tell you. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be enough. That's what we're aiming for. Well, when you come with the same attitude, it's much easier. Well, first of all, you will be much less stressed out, so it'll be easier to gather your thoughts and actually use that brain power, because when you're stressing out, it goes into survival mode, and your language, your target language, is not in very necessary, so it won't be in that. You won't have the ability to access your target language in that survival mode that will be triggered by anxiety, by high doses of anxiety. But I'm just mentioning this real quick. I talked about that in other videos. Being stressed out and being embarrassed, feeling adrenaline, is actually a great driver for learning languages, and it's good for acquisition. But when you're in that state, you can't really speak, or not at first. Okay, but back to the confidence. So when you approach a new situation, a trivial situation, where you will be exposed to your target language in a real life situation, meaning not online, not reading, not writing, speaking to another human being, that's when you will have the best results. And that's when you'll be surprised that you'll know so many words, because your brain knows. Your brain is very efficient, and once you've started learning, once it becomes apparent to your subconscious self that the target language you're learning is important, you have much more ability than you think. And you need to tap in those abilities by going towards the difficulty, to going where it's uncomfortable. And with the right confidence and with the right mindset, that's when you will have the best results. And what I've noticed is that adults have, or like language learners in general, especially, there's like a certain type of people that are a bit more perfectionist, they try to they aim for one level, a baseline level, at which they will allow themselves to go out there and try to speak, because like I said, lack of humility. I talked about that in the first part. And the thing is, to in order to it's kind of a paradox, because in order to achieve this level, you need to overcome those challenges, those real life challenges, in some uncontrolled environment. That's something I needed to bring up. Environment does a lot for this kind of things. Environment, we've heard about environments a lot on YouTube. There's are a lot of videos about that. There's a great video that Truthless did a while back. It's an Australian YouTuber. About He was doing videos about creativity and productivity. Really good channel. But anyway, he did a video about environment, and it does a lot for your habits, but it does a lot for your learning as well. When you're learning, you're absorbing through many senses, and those senses are not it's not just hearing and seeing. There's also feeling, smelling, and there are many other senses. There's not just six, actually there's more than that. And what I'm trying to say is that when you are immersed in the environment that you're not controlling, and when there's this factor of unpredictability, that's when you'll learn the most. That's when you will be performing at peak performance. But peak performance won't always be what you think it is. It won't always be, oh wow, I've had this conversation and I didn't stutter and it was all clear, I understood everything. No, this of course can always happen, because there are other circumstances, the way you feel, the speaker you're talking with, maybe they'll use some vocabulary that you've never heard of before, and all that. But when I'm saying peak performance, is that you will be, first of all, it feels pretty amazing once you overcome that first discomfort, that first embarrassment of trying to speak. Once you get in the flow, that's a very big part of it. And second of all, that's when you internalize, or you're on your way to internalizing, and that's how you succeed in language learning. Succeeding in language learning is not, well, according to me, in my opinion, yeah, it's not just, but it's not at all knowing every word and being able to participate in every situation. No, getting around with the language, being able to communicate pretty efficiently with the native speakers is already succeeding in language learning. It cannot be perfect. It's kind of sad to say, but it's very unlikely that you will achieve a native speaker level in any language, no matter how long you study it. I say very unlikely because, of course, there are some people that achieve this, but I don't think it's something that you should force. I think that if it has to happen, it happens, but you don't need to speak like a native to efficiently communicate your ideas and to make friends, socialize, and get all of the benefits of language learning. There's kind of a minimum effective dose here, and it's being able to communicate with the people, get around, being able to shop, maybe play cards, and have some conversations, and understand most of what you hear. Of course, you can you can achieve more on this. And for example, I am some of those that want to achieve a near native like language level in the language. But once you've had the confidence to go, and I'm assuming you've been studying the language for a little bit, and you're not completely you're not a complete stranger to the language. But once you've built up this confidence, this assertiveness to go talk and go socialize, well, you've done it. You made it. That's it. That's what you aim for. And your level should not be a reason not to do this. Au contraire, it should be a reason to do it, even if you think you don't know much. I've talked about this a lot. You can't really tell what's your level. You have some indicators in real life, and it takes time for them to come to you, and for them to be apparent to you. But you cannot self-assess the level you have in a language, because we have so many biases, and it's just we're part of our own. We're ourselves, so it's basically impossible to perceive ourselves in a neutral way. Anyway, I think I covered most of what I was thinking about, and yeah, the main message, if you want to remember just one or two sentences here, is succeeding in language learning is not talking perfectly with a perfect accent 100% of the time. It's more communicating, socializing, making friends, and succeeding is more of a flow, I think. And that's how paradox it's kind of a paradox, but that's how you can get the fastest learning when you learn a language, is to really fake it and act like if you were fluent before actually knowing all that many words and being all that comfortable. And I think that once you shift your perception and you enter this, I call this the childlike realm, you really see things differently, and you think of what's achievable differently too. And a lot is achievable because the brain is very, very powerful. So if you put yourself in that state of confidence, assertiveness, and you just act like you already speak it, that's when you'll have the best results, and that's when you will learn the fastest without even trying to learn fast and doing any of those methods you can find online. I mean, some of them will help to fix things here and there, but the core, not method, but the core, how can I say that? The core part of language learning should be this. It should be socializing. And on this, I will say à bientôt. Have a good night. It's because it's the evening here. And yeah, thank you for listening or watching. À bientôt.